The ZA Tech Show is made possible by Vodacom. Power to you at vodacom.co.za. And by BlackBerry. Love doing business on your BlackBerry smartphone at blackberry.co.za.
Hello and welcome to episode 204 of the ZA Tech Show for Monday, March the 26th, 2012. I'm Brett Haggard. Thanks for joining us. And tonight we have a panel of experts. Well, that's what I'm going to say anyway. One of them is an expert. That is Mr. Arthur Goldstuck from Worldwide Works. How are you, sir?
Good day, sir. I'm worried about what I'm an expert on.
Hold on. Say that all over again because I didn't even have your mic on. Say that all over again.
I'm worried about what I'm an expert on.
Yeah, clearly I'm not an
from
expert.
ending sentences with prepositions.
Okay, I'm not an expert at running the desk, clearly, tonight. But somebody that's an expert on arbitraria, Mr. Benedict Kelly.
That's good to be good for something.
How are you, sir?
I'm very well, thank you.
And thank you for joining us tonight on the ZA Tech Show. It promises to be quite a good episode. There's a little bit of news. Hopefully you guys have been swatting up on the news because I haven't been doing a hell of a lot of news hounding this week. I've been putting out a series of rather interesting fires. And I won't get into exactly what those are about, but they deal with all manner of interesting app issues and legal wranglings and stuff like that, with some stuff that we're starting up relatively soon. So watch the space. But nonetheless, we're here to speak about news. And there has been some. Let's start off, Mr. Kelly, with what you wanted to lead with, and that is Allan Knott-Craig's extremely bold prediction or ambitious goal of Cell-C taking 25% of the market by? When was the date?
Let's have a look.
Mr. Goldstuck, ring a bell? I just saw a headline on this. I didn't actually.
The next 3 to 4 years.
The next 3 to 4 years, Cell-C will own 25% of the market. So how big is Cell-C in the market at the moment is the first question.
Cell-C has around 8 million customers, probably around 8.1 or 8.2 million if you want to be really pedantic about it.
Okay.
At least that's what they claim.
All right.
And that makes up about 13.5% of the market.
Yeah. So basically double their market share in 3 to 4 years.
Double their market share. What do you think? I mean, doable?
Well, in
not
fact,
doable?
you must understand that's double their market share. That's not double the customers. That's more than double the customers.
Yeah, for sure. Because
the market is going to continue to grow. Maybe
sure.
not at a huge rate like it has in the past, but it's going to continue to grow. So, I mean, that's a lot, you know. So the only way you're going to do that is by buying customers. Yeah, and you hope your investors have got nice deep pockets.
I was quoted as enthusing about Allan Knott-Craig's appointment, but I do have to say I'm less enthusiastic about a target of 25%. I think he put it out there as a challenge to his company, to his team, and as something to get the opposition hot under the collar. There's almost no way of getting 25% of the current market in the space of 3 or 4 years, because what it really means is you've got to reduce MTN to probably below 30% of the market.
Yeah.
And you've got to reduce Vodacom to below 40% of the market.
And deal with the impending threat of ATA, which it's still a bit early to call for me. I don't know whether they're getting the user base or whatever the case is. They're definitely a disruptor in the space. I can see that they're being massively disruptive in the data space. And that is almost a strategy that Cell-C originally employed to kind of get a lot of mind share as being really competitive in the data space. So I don't know how easy it is, because now there's 4 players, not just 3. And ATA, I think that the benefit of being able to do really, really reduced rate calling to other telecom lines and things like that, there's that predefined list of numbers that you can call. The value of that still needs to be realized. So there are a couple of interesting tricks up sleeves over there.
I'll run some numbers by you very quickly,
please.
Just to put it in context. At the end of December, Vodacom had 31.7 million customers in South Africa. That's contract and prepaid.
Okay.
MTN had 22 million. that just gives you a sense of what Cell C has to do. They actually have to take away substantial market share from those guys. Cell C is around 8.1 million. ATA around 1.3 million probably. That's just an extrapolation because in September they had 1.14 million. And that gives you a total of 63.1 million. Spot the error. There's only about 40 million people with cell phones in South Africa. But that's because of all the dual SIM usage and machine to machine. And
how many SIM cards do you have, Arthur?
I've lost count of how many SIM cards I have. So I'm partly responsible for that.
I mean, I use 3 on a daily basis.
I suppose the other difficult one to call here is also how much of that is data SIM usage. Because, the one thing that aggravates the living hell out of me, and the reason I still have a MiFi, is because no one operator in South Africa is able to give me a package with multiple SIM cards and a single data bundle that I can use across multiple devices.
Yes.
That is a frustration. I still have to have a specific data SIM, but I can't have 4 or 5 SIMs that are all chewing off of the same data cap, because that's really what I want.
I mean, Vodacom will give you a data only SIM as a second SIM, but the problem is that you cannot get on those things a price competitive data package.
What you can do though is, so for my iPhone, or just on a 500 meg package, I can up the data package on that and then get a second SIM that I can use only for data. But the moment you activate it, it causes all forms of like haywire on the network, where that SIM, because it's a voice and data SIM, is trying to receive calls while it's on, and all kinds of mayhem goes on. But there. Even it's not elegant. It's not elegant.
But I'm saying that even if the technical end of it was working perfectly, that it was behaving as only a data SIM and only receiving data, and not interfering with your voice communications at all. They cannot. Vodacom at the moment have 149 Rand bundle, or 149 you get 2 gig during the day and 2 gig at night. You can't bolt that onto an existing contract. You can't say, I want that. So if you want to, you just have to look at the pricing. The pricing for contract customers is ridiculous. To get 2 gig, you're paying 400 Rand or something like that, if you want to bundle it onto your contract. So you're saying to your best customers, the guys who give you lots of money. I give Vodacom 500 Rand every single month, and I'm probably like down the lower end of a lot of the spectrums.
Yes,
especially for smartphone users. And I phone up my service provider. I go, I want to get some more data, but I want it tagged on, so I can have a data only SIM, so I can share between my iPad and my iPhone a reasonable amount of data, say 3 gig a month, which is probably what I need. But I can't do that without incurring massive costs, and it would just works out cheaper to go take out a 24-month contract and get 2 gig or whatever it is for 179 Rand or 149 Rand.
Yes.
And put a separate SIM in. Now, how does that make sense, No,
look, it doesn't, and that's the point. So here's a contrast for you, okay? So T-Mobile in the States, where I was 2 weeks ago for South by Southwest, they run at a very strange frequency, so you need a specific hardware to run it and everything else. But I was able to get, for $50, a unlimited voice and text package, including 2 gigs of data. All right, and then what you do for $10, you bolt $10 onto that, a unlimited international calling to landlines. All right, for the space of 30 days, 2 gigs of data, unlimited voice, unlimited text, and unlimited landline calling worldwide. $60. That's on prepaid. Now we all know that prepaid is always a lot more expensive than contract. So, we were cheaper on data, but on voice we're not. And the packages, you need to buy ridiculously high packages to get decent economies of scale in terms of the, per meg cost or whatever the case is. But then, of course, on the other end of the scale, it gets completely ridiculous. And also the interesting thing with that package from T-Mobile is the moment you go through your 2 gig, all it does is throttle you down to edge speeds, but it doesn't actually cut you off completely. So it's interesting to contrast what's going on in the international market with what's going on here. And I must say, very, very, very good service while I was there. For the 2 weeks, I hammered the crap out of it, and it worked just fine. So,
yeah, I think the mindset in this country still remains baffle the consumer, and you'll be able to squeeze extra margin out of them. And I don't think it's the way the CEOs of these organizations really think. But when it comes down to putting strategy in place and allowing the bean counters to figure out exactly how you're going to structure the packages, then it's those margins and the arithmetic that takes over, and the customer gets forgotten in that mix.
Yeah, no, for sure.
I mean, and the simple fact of it is also that Vodacom could have had an extra $150 from me every month if they were willing to give me an extra 2 gig for $150. But they can't. They physically can't do it because it would cost me 300 Rand.
Yeah.
Which is what I was paying Cell C for 5 gig. So why on earth would I pay the same amount for less than half?
Yeah.
You know?
So I also wanted to quickly get your guys' opinion on something while we're speaking cellular stuff, because we're in the process of renewing from our previous Cell C bundles. And Cell C hasn't really made their previous bundle any more attractive than what it was a year ago. They're $3,000 prepaid, get a dongle and get a decent data cap vibe. And it's been a year. So I'm quite disappointed with that. But we've been looking around the market, and a lot of guys are offering these Neotel jobbies. Well, in fact, specifically Vodacom's offering this Neotel stuff. Yeah. So you get this, and I think
Eta does also, they do a 60 plus 60.
Yes. Arthur, have you got any visibility into whether people are actually even using that, or whether it's a differentiator? I don't know. I don't surf really between midnight and 6 a.m. in the morning, right?
All you have to do is look at the trends graphs for traffic on almost any network, and you can see it if you look at your own website. For example, if you have an online magazine or online newspaper,
it tails off completely, right?
It peaks when people arrive at the office.
Yes.
Again at lunchtime, and just before they leave the office again, and then it disappears almost entirely as the evening progresses, and certainly after midnight, it completely tails off. But so what these networks are doing is really giving you nothing, or at least giving you a lot of nothing for nothing.
For the impression of giving you something. But but
here's what's midnight and 5 a.m.
That's in effect what they're doing.
But they should just rather call it that.
The reason they don't is that they don't want you running P2P, BitTorrent through the night.
So I mean, here's the thing. So 2 things quickly. Firstly, I had the opportunity when I went to CES earlier this year to stop in at the Googleplex. I think I mentioned that. And one of the presentations and interviews we got there was from one of the guys in Google Mobile. And you'd expect it to be all about the search engine and blah, 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 and stuff they're doing with the search engine. There was a fair amount of that in. But what was interesting was when they threw up some trends of how terrestrial usage compares to mobile usage. And what's really, really interesting is times of day. And what they were saying was it peaks before you get to the office, then it tails off. It starts picking up again in like a tea break, and then it disappears again. It peaks around lunchtime. It peaks in the afternoon again. And then what's interesting, from about 4 p.m. onwards, it starts climbing, and it climbs right through till about 11 o'clock at night, where it starts tailing off. And this is specifically Google usage, Google searches taking place from a mobile phone. So that would suggest that people are using it outside of office hours, and that makes absolute sense. But again, what it does show is that people aren't using it during the evening. Now, a couple of people have suggested, well, what these Neotel things are really, really good for is downloading data, your content over peer-to-peer networks, or movies or music or streaming or whatever the case is. But the point-blank reality is these caps are way too small to do anything meaningful with. I mean, 5 gigs, you burn through that in an evening and you're done, right?
Well, you can at least download the Windows 8 consumer preview, all 2.5 gigs of it, which I'll talk about later.
Twice in a month, and then you're done. The 64-bit and the 32-bit version.
And if you're updating all your Mac and iOS devices, you've got to download 700 meg for your iPad and your iPhone, plus another 1.4 gig for your Mac. So you could burn through a good 2 gig that way as well in a month. just running updates.
It's certainly for people who want to do those updates without eating into their day usage cap, let's call it, useful in terms of at least giving them some leeway. But for the average user who's not doing that on a regular basis, it doesn't really mean anything.
Now, here's an interesting one. Another thing that came out of South by Southwest. So we threw a couple of things on the table when Andy and I were talking there, and a couple of people mentioned stuff about the US market that was really, really interesting. So we think the US market and the developed markets is the absolute panacea, like uncapped data, absolutely fantastic, blah, 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 blah. The one thing that they're facing right now that we're not facing to nearly the same extent is the fact that they're running out of spectrum like soon. In the next 2 years, the US is officially out of spectrum. It's done. They're out of spectrum. There's no more spectrum available to license out. And the scary thing with that is, right, they're having to start implementing capping systems because there's only so much data and only so much bandwidth and spectrum to go around. So welcome, first world. You're now a third world country.
Well, the problem, Brett, is that we may not theoretically have the same spectrum problems that the US does, but in fact we do, because ICASA are so completely incompetent at handing it out. And every time they draw up a new spectrum map, it bears no resemblance to the reality of telecommunications on the ground in South Africa. And every time they pull out a new one of these out of their hat, it just ends up being another joke. I mean, if you look at the latest version of it, I mean, basically it's saying to the four operators who have mobile networks already, screw you, we don't give a crap about you, we're going to create competitors to you. When in fact, if you're actually thinking about the consumer, the actual telecommunications users in South Africa, you would be saying, here, Vodacom, MTN, I mean, I dare to say ATA, but probably them as well, and Cell C. Here is a nice big chunk of 4G spectrum for you to use. Now go out and build a goddamn network, and that will be what's right for
I want
the
to
consumer.
agree with Ben quickly. Firstly, it's one of the great paradoxes of this market that they want to open competition by giving the most valuable spectrum to people who will be the least likely to be able to make use of it, or at least to enable the consumer to benefit from it. But just getting back to the issue of spectrum availability, in the United States, they have the problem that it's running out. In South Africa, they have the problem, just to paraphrase what Ben was saying, of not giving any of it out.
And then giving it, and I was going to add, and then giving it to people that are going to sit on it and do absolutely nothing with it. I mean, has anybody looked in on Centec lately and kind of gone, excuse me, have you guys used the spectrum we threatened to take away from you a year to a year and a half ago?
We've heard that use it or lose it policy often now, and nothing's been done.
Yes, it's actually not being policed. It's a bloody travesty.
I mean, it's a very simple. I mean, I said give it to the big four guys.
Yes,
and then take a nice big chunk, sweet spot of the spectrum, and say and then find a company with nice deep pockets, like a Roynet or a Altec or something like that, and say, we want to commission you to build a wholesale 4G network.
Sure.
Which anybody can run an MVNO off. And so these companies can start off as MVNOs, and then they can build up their business, they can get subscribers, they can start the money coming through, and then the next time round, when the next time they start refarming the spectrum for some other reason, because it's going to happen at some point in the future, I mean, it's not the end of the game, then maybe there's number 5 on the list, who's now been able to build up their business as an MVNO on this wholesale network, but because it's a wholesale network, they actually get economies of scale. They should be able to compete with the Vodacoms and the MTNs of the world, and take that, and then they can start saying, well, actually now we want to build our own network. And then when the fifth generation of when the next spectrum allocation comes around, or when they start refarming one of the other spectrum areas and taking it away from the guys who've got it already because they don't really need it anymore, then you can turn around and say, okay, that's cool. We've got the spectrum now. We want some of that. We can build our own network, and then you've got number 5 on the list.
That should work well in the long term, but in the short term, it means that you're adding an additional obstacle and an additional body of cost to access to those networks. So Vodacom and MTN specifically are in a position to build out 4G networks.
Yes.
Cell C and ATA to some extent as well. ATA on the back of Telkom, obviously. But if you just took Vodacom and MTN, they could roll out 4G networks tomorrow.
Yes.
Whereas if they went through a process of commissioning something like that and trying to create a wholesale environment, which is part of their policy, incidentally, they really are building not just complexity, but also cost and delay into the process. And if they really go through with that, we'll wait another 2 or 3 years for LTE and 4G instead of something that's available right now.
Can I be massively controversial here for a second? Of course, that's something we never do on this here podcast.
Never seen it.
I'd like to suggest that I'm so desperate for the situation to get sorted right now that they should actually just get a international operator that is hungry enough for it to come in, buy that spectrum up, start working with it locally. It doesn't have to be a local company, but the bottom line has got to be they've got to be able to prove real value to the customer, because right now in the process of trying to create all of this legal environment that it benefits government and this and that and the next thing, we're actually forgetting, like you were saying earlier, Arthur, actually the customer, what's happening is data costs too much in this country. Cellular and communications cost too much in this country. The price needs to come down, because if we're ever as a country, or a continent for that matter, going to make use of technology as this great leveler and, being able to leapfrog ourselves into this same position as the rest of the world and seize all of these opportunities that are like knocking at our door, we're going to need that stuff. All right. And everything's getting so wrapped up in the minutiae detail that people are forgetting the big picture, and that is that the market's actually not moving forward, that the situation's actually not improving.
But the only people who are capable of doing this, it's not the international operator coming in. It's not going to make a blind bit of difference.
Agreed.
Because,
you think, dude, I will
use one word.
Okay. You've got two guys who are ready to do it.
Yeah. And I'll give you one word which will explain to you why a big international operator won't be able to come to South Africa and make a difference. The word is Neotel.
Okay.
Here we have a big international funded operator, and they have 100,000 consumer customers.
Okay, so let me rephrase. Go and find an international operator that has absolutely reached the threshold of their ability. They've reached the ceiling of their ability to grow. Okay, they now need to provide shareholder value. They have to provide growth. This is theoretically why the whole world is looking to Africa and the other emerging markets, because we're the only markets that can present any growth opportunity. So find somebody that's really in shit street at the moment and is not making any more money, and their shareholders are punishing them.
We brought in the Southern Bell Corporation about a century ago to transform telecom and to raid the South African consumer and Spectrum and all hope for the future. And they single-handedly helped to destroy the future of telecoms in this country. So you want to bring in someone else who's got the same desperate hunger and greed.
No, but I'm saying govern that by a very strict set of rules, that it has to be at all points to the benefit of the customer. It's got to have the customer's best interest at heart.
No one will come in.
Then give it to the incumbents. Yeah. They're ready to do it.
They want. Okay. And then all you need to do is say, guys, we want to see a plan for how you're going to improve rural telecommunications. Yeah. How are you going to make it easy?
Because that's the biggest forgotten thing. It's like it's this gigantic component of every single bit, and it's the only component that since time immemorial has been completely ignored in terms of the real evidence at the end of the day. No one's ever actually done anything decent to sort out the underserviced areas, right?
So if you just said to them, guys, in fact, I would say, you say to them, you show us a plan, a 10-year plan or a 5-year plan, if you have a Chinese leanings, which you can go, which we can come back in 5 or 10 years' time and hold you to these commitments in terms of how you're going to. It doesn't have to be deliver high-speed broadband. It has to be deliver meaningful internet access to rural communities. Okay. And you show us a plan how you're going to do that. We sign off on that plan, and we give you the spectrum for free. We not even going to charge you, and you're going to pay license fees like you do for everything else. But we're not going to have some massive where you spend billions of rands buying access to the spectrum, because that's crap. Because all that does is add additional. Yes, it's great for government because government gets all this money in their coffers. But in terms of delivering telecommunications to ordinary people, it's rubbish, because it means that the operators have to spend additional money on paying government for access to the spectrum, and they're not spending that money on rolling out the networks. And I'd rather they spend the money rolling out the networks.
Okay, so telecoms.
I think we should just mention one more thing in that context, because you asked earlier what news happened today, and amongst the news that happened was that Neotel announced that they had finally reached 100,000 consumer customers. And that's been like a magical threshold they've never been able to cross. It's been like a glass ceiling in telecommunications. And they had a year ago 50,000 customers, a year before that allegedly around 70,000. And it kept fluctuating, 70. Okay. Kept fluctuating between 40, 70, and 50. And the sense that they gave was that they simply couldn't crack this customer conundrum. And they weren't able to provide the kind of bundles that made sense, the handsets that made sense. I don't know if you ever played with that very first handset.
No, I've got one at home.
It's a fascinating
Ben loves
device.
it. He's one of the 100,000.
You couldn't.
You're not a number,
broadband
though, Ben,
device.
don't
It
worry.
also was a telephone.
Yes.
But you couldn't make a phone call and be online at the same
Okay,
time.
no, I actually don't have that one. I have the its little brother. So when there was
The phlegm-coloured
Neotel-
aerial phone.
There was the Neotel Prime, I think it was called, which was the USB one, which was a sort of medium speed internet access device. And then there was its little baby brother, which has a serial port on the back, which you can theoretically plug into your computer and connect to the internet, but you really wouldn't want to. But it's the best way. If you're in a decent Neotel coverage area, it is the cheapest way to get a home phone.
There's no question about that.
Because it's 99 Rand a month. Their calls to Neotel to Telkom call is cheaper than a Telkom to Telkom call. So
if you have decent coverage, so back then they created this device that no one really wanted. It was based on research that they commissioned from someone who had never done consumer research before. So it was a total disaster. They had no idea what the consumer wanted, and they went for advice to people who had no idea what a consumer looked like.
And they could have just spoken to Arthur.
Exactly. If they asked me, I would have told them what I wanted. And the result was that they flipped-flopped for years between unworkable consumer strategies, but finally they seem to have cracked it, and they now claim they're going for 1 million customers.
Really impressed with the 50 to 100,000 growth, 100% growth in a year. Cool, fantastic, well done, hats off. Are we happy with the 100,000 though?
No,
do you think it's good?
no,
I think they've massively underachieved.
If you look at what cell phone networks do, let me run a quick number by you. I'll call up my trusty old trend spreadsheet, and I'll tell you how many new customers Vodacom picked up from September to December 2011. It was approximately 1.8 million new customers. MTN picked up about 1.1 million new customers in 3 months. So that tells you something about the ability to build a customer base in the mobile arena if you price it right, package it right, market it right. Yeah. You have a presence at enough points of sale, etc. And all of those issues Neotel are beginning to address, but there's still a long way.
You just have to run through like the problems. I mean, there's like Connect Lite, which costs you 99 Rand a month, which is great.
It's kind of like a phone service.
Yeah, it's kind of like it works perfectly. There's some bundles on that. You get like NeoConnect Home, which got a bit of data bundle. It's got 5 gig of data, but you're paying $2.99 for 5 gig that's not bad. $2.99 for 5 gig of data isn't bad. But you end up, but if you go down to the like NeoFlex data, which is their more sort of higher end thing, you're paying $2.99 for 2 gig of data.
Sure.
I can go to ATA and pay 100 Rand less and get 8 gig more than that,
and it will be it's technically a truckload faster because it'll be technically capable of running.
I haven't used the Neotel data net, the CDMA data network for a while, but when I last used it, when I used to describe myself as Neotel's only happy customer, it was great. It worked. It was solid. It was reliable. The coverage was good. It really worked.
Fast though.
It wasn't blindingly fast, but it was fast enough.
Yeah.
But if you just want an understanding,
I like not having to buffer YouTube videos. Sorry, call me a call me a snob, but that's kind of nice.
But if you just want a clear, single, figure understanding of how out of touch Neotel is with the market, the NeoFlex data is supposed to be like a fixed
broadband,
fixed
wireless broadband, yeah.
And their out of bundle rate is 8 cents a megabyte, which is 80 Rand a gig. Nice. When your ADSL when your ADSL out of bundle, or your ADSL per gig is down to 20 Rand now? Some of them even less.
I've lost count of how low it's gone.
Yeah. So, I mean, basically what happened is that when they introduced it 4 years ago, there was a real option for people.
Yeah, it was actually an attractive price.
It was 80 Rand a meg. 80 Rand a gig was the standard ADSL price for a gig of data, but the world has moved on in the last 4 years.
Sure. I buy 100 gigs for 950 Rand a month.
Yeah. So the world,
so rugged.
The world has moved on.
It's a nice round figure.
And they haven't changed. They seem to they bashing their head up, keep bashing their head up against the same wall. And what is the definition of insanity? doing the same thing over and over again.
Expecting a different result.
And they're expecting a different result by doing the same thing.
Okay.
They need to change. I mean, Celsius realized that, and look how Celsius have revolutionized the company in the last 3 years.
It reminds me of a funny story. Sorry to harp on Neotel and its flaws, but this again was way back when they launched the first consumer offering. They had an email service that you had to log on to the web for. It was basically web-based email, but you had no option for using an email application on your own system. So you couldn't use Outlook, for example. And the main reason you couldn't do that was because they wouldn't give you an SMTP address, which you basically need to be able to send out mail
relaying,
from your own system.
They wouldn't allow relaying,
But it's not even a case of not allowing relaying. They wouldn't allow you to send mail from your own system. You had to send it via the web. If you don't give someone an SMTP address, they literally can't send email. And I've phoned the call center to take it up with them. And I said, what is the SMTP address? You guys aren't giving it. They said, no, we can't give it. I said, what do you mean you can't give it?
It's called the internet.
Yes. The guy said, well, we don't want to encourage people to send spam. So I said, how about email? How about encouraging them to use email?
Jeez, anyway. Okay, so let's move directly on to this. We'll stay roughly on the telecoms topic, and I wanted you guys to chime in on this. What do you think of, because we couldn't have a ZA Tech show without mentioning the A word. What do you think of Apple's royalty-free NanoSim that just got quashed this week? Do you think the idea has or had any merit? What do you think of the whole debacle?
Well, what's your standpoint on it?
So my standpoint is that I can kind of hear where they're coming from the perspective that we see all of these fantastic, very, very thin concepts from the likes of Corning with their, Gorilla Glass and this next generation of Gorilla Glass, these unbelievably thin devices. We're talking about, a lot of people speaking about phone type devices that are the size of a watch. When you get down to that size, how much real estate are you really prepared to sacrifice to be able to put even a micro SIM sized thing into that device? So I can kind of understand where it's coming from. The fact that it is, from what I understand, non-proprietary, they're going to contribute the idea out there. It's literally going to be the size of the SIM with no plastic around it, and anybody else can use it. I think is okay, but the market has turned around and said no, they don't like it. And of course, it's been quashed as a standard now. So,
I think part of the problem is that they don't really have the IP, the intellectual property, to roll it out on a royalty-free basis. And Nokia's big complaint, in fact, their big attack on Apple was exactly that they don't have the patents. So forget it. The other guys aren't going to share those patents with Apple because Apple wants to roll out this particular standard.
How did they get around the micro SIM issue, though? Because that one came completely out of left field. I mean, I didn't even know what a micro SIM was until the iPhone 4 happened. Well, actually, until the iPad happened, because the iPad was the first device to make use of a micro SIM, right? I was like, wasn't it?
iPhone 4.
iPhone 4. Okay, well, either way.
Yeah.
It was like, what is a micro SIM? And then everybody's like, it's just like a SIM. It's just smaller. And I was like, okay. And then you could cut it yourself. And I was like, okay, rad. Let's move on, right?
But
how did they get around that as an issue?
Market in micro SIM cutters.
Yes, fantastic little devices. Because the nice thing is you could keep the little bit that you cut out and convert it back into a normal size SIM afterwards, which is rad. But anyway, I was just kind of interested to get your guys' take on it.
I mean, it's interesting to see that Apple are saying that they will license out their micro SIM, their NanoSim design,
yes,
for free, as long as it's the standard.
Okay, but Arthur, to your point, is who's going to look after that and make sure the quality control takes place, even though it's in a royalty-free environment.
Yeah, look, I think the market is still cheesed off about the micro SIM.
Yes.
But Nokia have also embraced the micro SIM now with their linear range.
So has Motorola.
And the N9.
Yeah, and the Motorola, the Razr makes use of a micro SIM, which is quite interesting.
Yeah, so clearly it's being recognized as a viable standard. It makes sense to have less space being taken up by something like this, and it also opens up a far better route to having little slots on the side where you stick your SIM in instead of having to break your battery.
Sure.
So,
I mean, the market's evolved and the devices have evolved to a point where it's actually I mean, it used to be you had to turn your device off because you had to take the battery out to swap your SIM. And with, I don't know what it's like with the Lumina, but with the iPhones and the iPads, you can hot swap your SIMs.
You can do that. You can do that with the Nokia as well. It's quite easy to open. It's a bit of a mission in terms of figuring out how to do it in the first place. But once you figured it out, it's fairly easy. But I think the ultimate goal of this trend, or the ultimate destination rather, is a virtual SIM. I don't think you should have a physical SIM at all. I don't particularly see the point of having a SIM.
Yes,
the phone should be able to pick up
you provision it through
the
the
network,
cloud.
and you essentially buy your phone number the way you do anywhere on a SIM card. Instead of having to stick the SIM card in, you key it in. You have a password that you got when you bought the number or paid for it, whether you bought it online or not. So you can buy SIM cards, or you can buy the equivalent of a SIM card.
Why not just make
online.
it a username as well? You can link it to an email address if you
Makes
want,
it
whatever.
so much easier. And I haven't quite understood why the market hasn't gone that route.
From an authorization perspective, you open up a web browser, hit the service, link up the IMEI number to the... I mean, the same way that
And you can even do
FNB
it on the phone
provides the
itself.
security for the app, all right? So you have to explicitly go into their portal and link an IMEI number to the application in order to authorize it, and then it's still covered by a password at the end of the day. I mean, why not? The technology exists.
Exactly. And if you consider the single biggest category of mobile commerce in this country is airtime top-ups on the phone itself.
Yes.
So you buy your airtime via the phone, or you buy it in a store. You're not really buying the piece of paper that they give you when you buy airtime. You're buying the number
Yes.
that goes with a piece of paper. You key in that
that's right.
number, and you have airtime. Why can't you do that with
a phone?
a virtual SIM?
Wow, you know how
Or any
that would
device,
ridiculously revolutionize being able to travel. I would really like to go to the States and buy a number for a week, or have that number available to me in perpetuity and just top it up when I need to. I'm on this number now,
So
thank
I think
you very
for once, Apple is proposing a solution that we actually want to move beyond. They're trying to maintain a 20th century way of thinking, which is very unlike Apple.
Can you imagine the how cool it would be if you landed at JFK Airport in New York, and you flick on your iPad, and it says there are 4 networks available here. Which one would you like to use? And it goes Verizon, AT&T, Sprint, T-Mobile, and you go, actually I want to use AT&T, and it says, okay, in order to use a little thing pops up, says please give us your credit card number. And you go type in your credit card number, and it says, what do you want to buy? And you say, I want to buy, and it just pops you up the options. And you say, thank you very much, you are now registered on the AT&T network.
And what would be read is, hey, just like phone me on my normal number. I'm just now on AT&T, because guess what? I own the number. Be very rad. If you think about it, this is where we could end up going the moment VoIP becomes a standard, because the idea is it doesn't depend on which network you're running.
Precisely.
All right, you've bought a number. I can be sitting in outer Mongolia, providing I've got a fast enough internet connection. When somebody phones me on that SIP number I've got, it rings in outer Mongolia.
In fact, you have that service already, and Skype has a variation of it as well. So you already have it operating in the VoIP world. Why not on the cell phone?
For sure.
And part of the reason for that, of course, is that the networks then have less of a lock on their customers.
Yeah. So let's change tack once again completely before we get on to picks of the week. It is something we chatted about briefly last week, which was Windows 8. But what's kind of cool was this week the rumors have started circulating that we might well see a release candidate of 8 being available by May. And from what I've seen and from what I've heard around the campfire, that is quite plausible. Like I said last week, one of the things I've been most impressed with from Microsoft's perspective is the fact at how open they have been throughout this alpha, beta, and now onto the release candidate phase. It's the first time, I think, in Microsoft's history they've really allowed this amount of visibility and this amount of participation from their user base. I think it's cool. I think it's revolutionary. I think that they could well be on track for a May release candidate. Because hell, I think consumer preview is pretty damn stable right now. I wish I could just take away that thing at the top that says preview, because that like really gets in my face. But apart from that, I quite like it. Arthur, your thoughts?
Yeah, I've been using Windows 8 quite extensively on a number of computers, including this one.
Your Vio.
This is an ancient Vio, must be at least...
Come, let's hold it up to the camera so that they can
Arthur
see.
always the show and tell.
Holy hell. Good thing I didn't go to gym today. Now that's a Vio. That's a
about
notebook.
3 years old. It's not what you would call an ultrabook, but The amazing thing about Windows 8, when you look at it on this, it makes it look, when you glance at it, like a tablet.
Yes.
Because it is designed for the tablet.
For sure.
But at the same time, it looks way cool on a laptop, and it makes these clunky old laptops look cool as well.
Yes.
So I think it actually gives new life to PCs and laptops at the same time as giving Microsoft new life in the tablet market.
Strangely enough, the one thing I'm pretty keen to do is I've got a Lenovo netbook. So remember they did the Lenovo netbooks with a touchscreen with a convertible little thing. They never really took off because I think that the software that was running on it was just a little bit too bulky for the processor and everything else. What I like about 8 is that it's actually damn good at running on lower spec machines, which I think is cool. Correct. Because of course that kernel's been completely rewritten. But the I'm kind of interested to see how the touch is going to work on that, because it's strange. We're doing a little bit of Windows 8 dev at the moment. We've got an app that we're building that hopefully I can talk a little bit more about shortly. I should be seeing my first installment of code and preview by next week. Cool. So it's pretty excited. But going through that process, Microsoft has said all along that touch is not an imperative for them. You can get by with the mouse. But I don't know. I actually... I didn't buy into the whole touch paradigm. Now that I'm playing with it and starting to experiment with stuff, the fact that I've got to hit like Windows key C every time to get the charms up, and there's a different keystroke to get this thing up and that thing up, and often the mouse doesn't work, when you drag it to a particular part of the screen, I'm going, okay, this has got to be touch, even if it is rather clunky leaning over your keyboard in order to touch your screen. But touch has got to be a part of this.
I tend to agree from two perspectives. One is that it's designed for touch. It's very clear. It's far easier to use it as a touchscreen device. But at the same time, just because it's designed for a tablet doesn't mean it's not going to work well on a PC. So the other perspective is that when you want to type, you can default back to your old desktop. That's what I really like about it. It's and there it is. If you go to, whoops.
You've got to speak into the mic so that we can hear you.
I don't know if you can.
There we go.
That,
we can hear you fine.
But I wanted to touch it actually, but I go to that little icon that says desktop, click on it.
Are you back in Windows Classic, right?
And it looks like Windows Classic.
Yeah, no, for sure. But when you click on the start button, it takes you back to Metro, right?
Yes. The only difficulty I still have is switching off the machine from Windows Metro. I can never find the off button.
It's again, like you say, very clearly designed for the tablet environment. You switch, you close the lid, and it does its thing. I've been massively impressed. It's something that it's strange for me to admit, because I have been very much a purist, and I've really liked the kind of zen, very, very clean environment that Mac has done so well for a really, really long time. I've really enjoyed the hardware and all of that kind of stuff. But of late, it feels to me like Lion's getting a little bit clunky. It's not feeling great. It's not talking to me. What I look at as well is I look at the fact that Apple's moving towards this vision of being able to create a unified experience across all of their devices. Okay, so here we're talking about an iPhone, a tablet, and a desktop running a single OS, which is going to be iOS. But looking at their progress at the moment and looking where they are with Mountain Lion, we're 2 gens away from that happening. All right, it is such an interesting thing as a industry commentator to look at how quickly that can change, because Microsoft a year ago, I would have said to you, was dead in the water. Windows 7's great, it works, it's very functional, but it's really not doing anything.
Not part of the new
it's not doing anything fantastic.
Yeah.
Here, Apple talks about this vision that they're moving towards, this iOS thing, and they start bringing very iOS-type features into macOS, and bam, suddenly, Microsoft has this vision completely realized. So my prediction is that we will actually have Windows 8 on cell phones before the end of this year.
Well, if you have a look at Windows phones, Windows 7 Phone or Windows 7.5,
yes,
it's a lot like what Windows 8 is going to look like. And in fact, I think it's designed to prepare us for Windows 8. So if you want to know what it's going to function like on a cell phone or on a tablet, then pick up a Windows phone like the Nokia Lumia, for example, and that'll give you a very good sense of it. But What excites me about it is that it introduces an environment where you have something like, and I'm going to mention in advance one of my picks of the week.
Cool.
It's one of the Samsung devices that was unveiled at the Samsung Africa Forum in Cape Town last week, but one that they didn't make a fuss about. It was on display, but they never mentioned it in the presentations of the new devices because it's been around for a little while, but very quietly entered the market. It's called the Samsung Slate PC.
Okay.
And it is a Slate, and a Slate is really the old-fashioned name for a tablet.
The Core i7 or Core i5. It's got a traditional hard disk. It's pretty much a keyboardless notebook.
It's in fact touch. What it is. It's a 11.6 inch tablet on a mount with a wireless keyboard.
Okay, but it's running an Intel processor,
It's running an Intel processor, and it's running Windows 7.
Okay, so this is the same device that they used to launch developer preview of 8. It's a Windows 7 device, but it's running all Intel hardware inside, and they, this is actually the device that they gave away at build to every single one of the developers with 8 loaded on.
Damn, I should have been there.
Well, but, I was there, and sadly enough, the press had to give all of their units back. I was like, what? Everyone else gets to keep their review unit, and we have to give ours back?
Bummer.
Yeah,
because I'll tell you, that's the thing that struck me about it. I thought to myself, okay, here's a Windows 8 device. It hasn't got Windows 8 on it yet, but I can picture and feel and touch Windows 8 on this thing.
Then you feel, okay, but the hardware is still not there, all right? What I'm excited about for Windows 8 and what I want to see is I want to see that little sucker running on ARM, because that for me is where it's at. ARM's a completely new architecture for Windows, all right? It looks good whenever Steven Sinofsky holds up an ARM-based tablet running 8 and he swipes through it and it looks very, very fluid. But that's where the killer power savings are coming in. That's where the instant on and off states are coming in. Very, very elegant memory management technology built right on top of it. That, I think, is cool. And if you've got the same kind of functionality on that kind of device as what you'd have on a notebook running 8, now we're starting to talk about something I'm excited about. That's cool.
I'm already excited about that particular device because I can see it going into my travel bag when I board a plane, for example, using it on that plane for however many hours it can run, like I would with a tablet, except it's a fully functional Windows PC with all my Windows programs on it, and not a tablet with all the trimmed down apps and the inability to create documents effectively and work spreadsheets effectively.
But that's the value proposition of 8, is the fact that it's full-blown Windows. It's the full-blown Windows kernel. And I know there are some complexities that they're dealing with at the moment, which is I think why they've been so quiet about 8 on ARM, because the applications are not going to be backward compatible. Current applications in the market that run on 7 will not run on ARM-based Windows 8. All right, it's just too much of a mission to port that across. But I know for a fact that the Microsoft Office team is working very, very heavily on Metro-based versions of Office. We'll probably see that in 2 iterations' time. Makes sense that we will. But those will support ARM. And I think that's the thing. It's more of a, as you saw with the Samsung device, Arthur, the fact that you can dock it and it's got a keyboard and everything else, all right, and you can push it out onto a bigger screen and that kind of stuff, that's the notebook of the future. That's the mobile computer of the future.
That's certainly the future that I saw.
If that runs ARM and I can create content on that, media creation and content creation on that kind of device, sold. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
I'll take 2.
That's the next generation.
One for home and one for work.
For sure. You don't need 2. You can carry it around with you. But I think you also mentioned in passing one of the crucial learnings that come out of this. Apple are in a little bit of trouble, I believe, with the Mac OS. I find the Mac OS, I love the MacBook Air. Absolutely love it. I adore it.
No, it's a device.
But the Mac OS freaks me out. I find it so inefficient.
I've gotten very, very used to it, and the reason I can get around it so easily is because I'm extremely familiar with it, right? And it does certain things in such a fantastically logical fashion that works for me. Instead of having to open up a mail document and then bring an attachment into it, I can start with the attachment and and create a mail document using the attachment, which for me is kind of nice. Not by using a context menu. All of the drag and drop stuff just works for me. But I think you're right that this whole Apple dominance in the market is beginning to show cracks. All right. Like I was saying just now, this leapfrogging by Microsoft. All right. Microsoft, by the end of the year, will have pipped Apple to the post on that tablet, notebook, and handset running a single unified operating system vision. Right? That can't feel nice if you're in one infinite loop Cupertino, right?
Mm-hmm. Of course, they don't believe it there. They don't see it coming, and they don't want to see it coming. It's a bit like Netscape when Microsoft entered the browser market.
Yeah.
They refuse to believe that Microsoft could do it. And I think that's the thinking at Apple at the moment. They don't believe that Microsoft can do it, so they're not watching that.
And I think even though the new iPad is sold like hell, there's some very critical commentary out there about that device.
Yep,
I think I would have been sold on that device if it was faster at applications. But the fact that my basic everyday application performance is absolutely no different on that device than what it is on my iPad 2, it doesn't justify me having to undergo that upgrade. Now, don't get me wrong. Generally with Apple stuff, there's a decent enough reason to go from one generation to the next, to the next, to the next. Apple has hit a little snag here for me because it's the first time in a long time I'm not convinced. I don't feel I can get rid of my iPad 2 in order to move to the next iPad. I can't justify it. There's just not enough for me there to do that. There's some superficially stuff. And personally, I don't care about the camera. Right? I saw one guy at South by Southwest holding up his iPad and taking a photo, and about 300 people behind him rolling around on the floor, pointing and laughing.
Taking
right?
photos of him taking the photo.
Yeah, it was like, look at this tool. But but in all honesty, it's like there are things that they've upgraded on that device that for me just makes no sense. So let's see. I mean, but I think the point is, all is not fantastically happy at One Infinite.
Shall I run some numbers past you quickly on the tablet market?
Please, yeah, let's do it.
Because I've just finished that exercise. In fact, the story is up in Gadget today.
Okay,
Gadget.co.za for my weekly free plug on Gadget.
Plug.
I finally got numbers out of Samsung.
Okay.
In terms of the number of Galaxy tabs sold in this market. And they are astonishing numbers. They're selling around 20,000 a month.
In South Africa, they are absolutely cooking.
Which is a shocker really, because that's around what Apple are selling, at least what iPads are selling in this market. So you have a situation at the end of last month where we had around 400,000 tablets in the market. 405,000 is the last figure that I came up with. It's huge. It's
South
massive.
Africa.
In South Africa alone, my original estimate, which was something I'd written in Meanburn, was 325,000. And that was before I got confirmed numbers from both Vodacom and Samsung. And what those numbers showed is that Samsung have sold around 180,000 Galaxy tabs, 10-inch and 7,
Nothing
10.1
wrong with
and
that.
7-inch.
Wow, that's good.
And most of them 10-inch, which is the high margin.
Well, the 7-inch is
device.
not, in my opinion, I think it's still a grossly inadequate device. It's
I fully agree.
It's what they call a phablet. It is a tablet that's actually a phone. It's like a phone with a big screen, really.
What they launched last week was the 7.7-inch, the one that was banned in Germany, or at least from the IFA show.
Oh, yes.
Because Apple got a court interdict against them when they wanted to launch it at the show. So that's now coming to South Africa. And
inadvertently, they didn't need to launch it because they created so much bloody news about it.
Everyone wanted to see this device that Apple wanted to ban.
The interesting one for me, just on that, Arthur, is when I was at Mobile World, we got demoed the new 10-inch Note. The Samsung Note. Really nice device, I must say. Cool. And I think that is for me kind of, I never thought that I'd actually want some form of stylus on that device, but it adds quite a bit to the experience.
Sure, it makes the stylus make sense.
So the classic Note, the handset-based Note, for me has absolutely no appeal. I can understand why someone else likes it.
But the 10-inch, people using it.
Yeah, no, business people for sure. But it's a two-handed device for me. And if you're going to make a two-handed device, make it big. Make me have to use two hands with it instead of it being somewhere uncomfortable. But the interesting point was, so they launched this Note and they show it off to us and everything else. And I kind of put my hand up and I go, so what you're really telling us is pretty much the same device as the 10-inch Galaxy Tab, but the big difference is it now has a pen. So this is like the VP, right? He goes, yes. So I said, aren't you worried about that cannibalizing the market you've already got with the 10-inch tab? And he says, well, I hope so. Because we haven't done, and this was the money shot, because we haven't done particularly well in tablets as Samsung. Now, the interesting thing was, I take this back to
give as many options as they possibly can.
I take this back to the Samsung South Africa team, and they go, well, that's ridiculous, because we're cooking with this device in South Africa. It hasn't been a worldwide success, and that I find quite interesting.
So the numbers are around 180,000 Samsung Galaxy tabs, 10.1 inch and 7 inch, around 190,000 Apple iPads. You can check the Gadget article for the exact
awesome.
numbers, and 5 to 10,000 other devices. So it's
from people who got suckered into buying other stuff.
It's coming very close to 50-50 between Samsung and Apple. But I have to say that
because that's not the case overseas. I mean, it's like Android has pretty much been a non-starter internationally for tablet, which is for me been quite interesting.
Just watch those numbers carefully, because Apple's market share is coming close to 60%, and that suggests a lot of other tablets being sold.
Yes, for sure.
So one's got to be careful of the triumphalist approach that's being taken by a lot of the Apple fans.
No, it's just surprising to see the contrast.
Still blowing away the rest, because they're not really looking at what the rest are doing, and that was the key. It was necessary to find out exactly what Samsung are experiencing in this market, rather than simply looking at the overall impression of it being an iPad-only market. And the truth of the matter is that with the iPad 2 having dropped to 3,999, possibly dropping even further once the iPad 3 comes into the market, I think you're going to see an acceleration of iPad sales. But the fact is that Samsung tablet sales are equally high, so that makes it a two-horse race.
So I'm getting ice cream sandwich to put on one or two of my Android tablets in the next week or so to play around with that. The builds are now starting to kind of get there. We're starting to see ice cream sandwich come to Android phones. That I really, really like. I'll be honest with you. ICS is a really nice OS. I think Android's finally at that place where I can consider switching now. Just bloody hell, Instagram, hurry up and release your version for Android, and I'll move right across. Speaking of that, let me quickly slip that in. This week, the pre-order, well, not the pre-order, but pick me beta service went live the past couple of days. So if you're an Instagram addict and you want to move to Android, or you just want it on Android, go over to instagram.com/Android, put your email address in there, and they'll mail you when it's ready to be tested or downloaded. Which
Ben's
is cool.
already logging on.
Yeah, no, I did it this morning when the story broke. I was like, gotta have it, because that's the one thing for me that's missing from Android right now. Okay, picks of the week, gentlemen. Let's talk some tech. So Arthur, let's start with you. You were talking about this Slate device being your one pick of the week.
That's my one pick of the week, the Samsung Slate PC. And I have to say, it just edges out the 7.7-inch tablet that they released last week, because it's a delight to hold and use, but it's not going to change my life.
Yes, for sure.
The 11.6 is going to potentially change my life.
11.6-inch Slate, yes?
Yeah.
Okay,
it's
cool.
not called a tablet. They call it a PC, in fact, a Slate PC.
Yes.
But in my heart, it's a tablet.
What kind of battery life is that getting? I've heard reports of about 3 to 4 hours.
I'm not sure.
So it is,
that.
It is a PC, and I think realistically, with what's going on in the Ultrabook space at the moment, we're going to see that skyrocket at the moment. Is it Ivy Bridge comes out?
Yeah.
Sorry, I've had a very, very long day, so I'm trying to think. But yes, the next generation of Intel chipset, ultra-low voltage processors, we're going to see the battery life on those kind of devices go up. So that could allow it to strongly start competing with tablet. What is your other pick of the week? Angry Birds Space. Hell,
it is gorgeous.
It is so good.
And this is my favorite screen from all of Angry Birds Space. This is the most hilarious moon rover or space rover I've ever seen.
I'm sure we can rock a little bit of a zoom over there.
That's around
over here.
that's around level 80 or so. So you've got to play a while before you get to it.
You've been busy, Mr. Goldstuck. Have you filed any copy this week besides your one stat story, or have you been Angry Birds spacing?
Well, you have to have got through Angry Birds Space to be able to talk about it intelligently. And it's a deeply intelligent game. What's amazing about it is they launched it from the International Space Station.
Yes.
And I urge people to go and have a look at the YouTube video of the NASA engineer who demonstrates physically how Angry Birds would work in space using little
Angry Birds
props. Yeah. One little Angry Bird among many other things.
So I just watched the video, and it's like, you know what, the one thing, so I've played the game, and that's very cool. But I watched the launch video, the little whole animation they did for it this afternoon, and the intro video and everything else. And you know what? Really, hats off. They put a lot of effort into the backstory and all of the stuff around it, and it's like the simplest concept ever. It's like,
and there's one wonderful moment in it, and it's very hard to find. There's one particular level where you have a door into hyperspace. I presume it's a wormhole,
like a portal,
that appears.
Yes.
But it doesn't just appear automatically. I found by accident. I managed to get one of my birds into the wormhole, and suddenly they were all teleported into I would call it a bonus level. This bonus level was a kind of stylized version of old Space Invaders.
Awesome.
And I loved that. It was such a tribute
Easter
to
eggs.
the old days.
It was an Easter egg.
Yeah,
I love that
an
kind
Easter
of
egg.
stuff. That's fantastic.
And that was my other favorite screen from Angry Birds Space, but there's no question about it. I have to mention as well, I've been playing it on a Galaxy Tab 10.1.
Yes.
And absolutely flawless gameplay, motion, swiping, aiming, etc.
That's not running RCS yet, though. That's still running Honeycomb, right?
That's still Honeycomb.
Okay. No, for me, that's, like I said, where it's got to go. Ice cream sandwich on a tablet, yes, please. Yummy. Mr. Kelly, what is your pick of the week, sir?
My pick of the week is a site I discovered through Darren Smith talking about on Twitter, called 500 I think it's pixels, 500px.com. And it's the only way I can describe it is it's Flickr meets Pinterest. It's a photo site.
Flinterest.
Yeah, it's a photo site. Its layout, I would say, strongly resembles Pinterest.
Okay.
In terms of like lots of pictures, very visual, very easy to just like scroll down pages and pages. But it's designed actually for professional photographers.
All right.
In that they can then sell there's a built-in marketplace, so you can sell you can buy and sell photos.
Okay.
On the site, they also do, like, I think if you're in the States, they'll do canvas prints of photos if the photos are high res enough, and you literally go, like, you click on a photo and then you'll see and there's a like button and you can follow various people. So it's got all the social media stuff built in, and then you can literally, there's a button which says I want to buy this photo at the bottom, and you click on that, and if the photo's available for purchase, then it'll take you through to the store thing, and if the photo's not available for purchase, it will say we'll notify you if this photo becomes available in the future for purchase.
What are the prices like?
So it's, I would say, very cheap to buy a photo. It's like $2.93 for an image.
That's a complete
that's for personal use.
Okay, cool.
Personal use. I don't think they've really got it's not really a Shutterstock kind of thing.
So it's more like I really like your image. Here's a tip, right? I could use it as my desktop wallpaper.
Or you could buy, if you really really like it, you could buy it as
like a print,
as on canvas, framed and everything, with a stretch frame and everything, and then I guess the photographer gets a decent chunk out of that money as well. But yeah, I think what you can also then contact the person and say, look, I really like this photo, I want to use it professionally or commercially, how much are we going to talk about here? So you can actually contact the photographers, and the quality of the images that you get, I don't follow a lot of people, but just the quality of images on the site are just really, really awesome. I mean, there's a few odd ones. There's a guy riding a Segway for some reason, which looks really stupid. But then there's this picture of this crow. I'll show it. If you just look at this picture.
Hold it up to that one over there.
This camera there, like there.
Destroy the mic.
So you'll see. I mean, Brett, you can see that.
Yes.
I mean, that is a stunning photo.
That is really good.
I mean, I would be happy to put that on my wall at home. and the site is just bursting with these kind of photos. So I think it is really a sort of a future view on, and then you can say, if you say, yeah, I like this photo, then it gets voted up and stuff like that as well, which is great. And I mean, you can just scroll down, and it's just pages and pages of really beautiful photographs. And depending on who you follow, you get to see the stuff they like and they comment on, and then so it all works into itself.
Cool. Okay, fantastic. So my pick is something that I should have picked last week because I've been playing it for about 2 weeks. It's also a game, Mr. Goldstuck. Here's the next one. So when you get to like level 160 of Angry Birds, should take you about a day or two. You should then install an application called Draw Something. Mm-hmm. Now, if you guys don't know about Draw Something, okay, you really should look on the internet, because it is drawsome to pick a little meme out of Draw Something. Essentially, this is Pictionary, but virtual Pictionary. So what you get to do, it's made by a company called OMG Pop. And OMG Pop recently got acquired by Zynga, I think.
$200 million.
Yep. Not a small amount of change.
Hard days for app developers, eh?
And man, it just like appeared on the scene, massively popular, and within days, I think, was like snapped up very, very quickly by Zynga. But
I think Zynga's desperate to build their asset base.
Yes, for sure. But it is the most fantastic, really, really simple game. So essentially what happens is it shows you a series of words. You pick a word, you draw it, all right, with your finger on your tablet. And you then send it off to either a Facebook friend or a Twitter friend. You know, it's one of those games that works through Facebook, just like Words with Friends does. But the coolest part about it is the fact that it doesn't just show you the completed picture, just like Pictionary, it shows you the person drawing it. And the cool thing is when they make a mistake, they hit the eraser tool and they go rub something out. And it's just really a pleasure to play. A very, very quick, really, really fluid experience, really, really simple experience as well. But I think really, really cutesy game. And you should totally get it. You should go onto the I think it's available I know it's available for Android. I know it's available for iOS. I'm not sure what other OS is available for, but seriously, if you want to play something that is not Farmville, this is a fantastic game. My other pick
is available for in by the way, the Google app market is now called Google Play.
Yes, that completely took me by surprise. Also, I couldn't find it on my Android phone the other day.
And also, what's even more confusing is they relaunched as Google Play, and when you log on, you find yourself in the Play shop instead of in Google Play. But yes, it's available in Google Play.
Yes. Oh, so and just to quickly confirm, it's 99 US cents for the paid-for version. I think get it now for 99 cents, limited time. It used to be $2. It's now $1. Available in the App Store and Android Marketplace. And then the other one is something that's fairly old, but something that I think is pretty fantastic. And this is something called the Pop Phone. Okay, essentially it is an old...
What's a phone?
Okay, so the Pop Phone, it is an old telephone handset with a stereo mini jack at the other end. All right, so you can look all retro. You can plug it into your cell phone and use it. It's surprisingly comfortable for long calls and stuff like that. You don't get that hot ear syndrome that you do with a cell phone. But what's fantastic is we're switching to voice over IP in the office, and everybody's talking about getting these ridiculous looking handsets. Everybody looks like a call center representative, and I'm like, boo, bad. Let's all get pop phones. I mean, how rad would it be having that thing lying on your desk? All right, and a phone call comes in, you pick it up and you hold it to your ear. It's available in a whole bunch of different colors. Everybody gets a red one for some reason. The red telephone is ringing. It's like it's clearly urgent. But I mean, feel that. Unbelievably cool. Nice and light, comfy to the ear, very good sound quality. Takes me back to my younger days as a news journalist, stomping around for news stories. So I think it's kind of cool.
So where's the Bluetooth?
No Bluetooth. Wires, China, wires. high fidelity sound. But I think it's pretty cool. It's called the Pop Phone, and I think it's like $400 or $500 at retail, which is actually not bad at all.
I think the 22nd century is going to really judge us for that one.
Retro's back, dudes. Retro's back. Like, I'm not a hipster, because if I was a hipster, I would have had one of these 2 months ago. But they definitely, the retro thing is coming back, and I think it's pretty cool.
I love retro, but there are limits. Purple is one of those limits.
Purple is one of those limits. Well, yes, you could have got vinyl's back. Fedoras are back. Dude, Ray-Ban Wayfarers are back, like with a vengeance. As long as the shoulder pads from the 80s don't come back, I'm happy.
You know what's even back is virtual reality goggles.
Oh, yeah.
They're called 3D.
Yeah, they're called 3D. The kind you used to get in certain very high-tech arcades around the world.
But if you played with some of those goggles, you look absolutely ridiculous in them. I mean, a whole bunch of us tried them on at the Sony stand at CES. I mean, you look like a complete chop, but it's like gigantic screen in front of you. It's like motion sensitive, so when you move your head, it moves. That's rad. Love it. Do it.
And there goes another contribution to pedestrian fatalities.
Indeed. And I think on that note, we shall call it, unless there is something else you gentlemen would like to talk about. But I think we're like 15 minutes over, so Simon's probably going to hate me when he gets around to editing this episode.
There's something beeping in the background. I think that's a sign that the battery's about to die on one of our cameras.
Okay, I couldn't hear anything. I've got cans on, so... Too bad, so sad. But that's it for episode 204 for Monday, the 26th of March, 2012. Arthur Goldstuck, thank you for joining us, sir.
Thank you, Bretsky.
And who are you again? Ben Kelly. There we go. Ben Kelly of the late Deadline fame.
He's at Benedict Kelly, however.
He likes the whooshing sound that deadlines make as they go by a little too much. Sorry, that's a little bit of a joke. And of course, I'm Brett Haggard. Bretsky on Twitter. Thanks for joining us. If this is your first time listening to the ZA Tech Show, make a plan to do it more regularly. If you're a fan of the show, you can catch us live every Monday at about 7 p.m. Central African Time. www.zatech.co.za/live. There's an audio stream and a video stream and an IRC chat that you can come and hang out with.
Does anyone still do IRC?
Dude, IRC is rocking. It is rocking. Told you retro's coming back, man. It's like everything's cool. Anyway, that's it for this week. Take care.